We have with us Mr. Paul Bradley, who is the CEO of Caprica International and a technology enthusiast. I request Paul Bradley to please come up.
Good morning, and it's always great to be back in India, having spent a lot of time here in the past. Thanks to Rakesh for the invitation with the great conference. And John is an old friend of over 15 years, so I started reading his big book too. And his books are getting smaller and smaller, and the wisdom is getting larger and larger. So that's probably a good trend, my friend. So I want to talk about disruption, how the industry that we're in is continuously transforming, and how the next 5 years will be the most challenging or exciting, depending on your perspective, but the change is coming fast. So living in Singapore, but having lived in India and China elsewhere, Singapore now is, and part of the new model, is trying to become a virtual orchestration center for the whole ASEAN region and even connecting with India. So as finance, it's a center, but the financial resources are spread across the region. In supply chain, they want to be a hub, but they want to basically connect to infrastructure across the region. Same with manufacturing. The costs are going up, so they know more manufacturing will be in India, will be in ASEAN, but Singapore as a country is building its own network orchestration strategy. Very, very unique as a country. Now, this is how some people optimize loads in logistics, but it's really the past. And I'm still not sure how they were able to do that. It's really inefficient, but one of my concerns is how we're using words incorrectly. So logistics companies are saying they do supply chain management. A truck driver paints his truck logistics, and now he's a logistics company. Then he paints it 3PL, and he's a 3PL. But I still think he's a truck. We need to understand the role that everyone plays, from warehousing and trucking to 3PL to freight forwarders to 4PL. I had the privilege with Dr. Fung to create the first 4PL in Asia, neutral model, transparent, with some Fortune 500 clients. It's a very radical thing. But basically, this is my slide where I really look at this. And the entire model is changing. We have total logistics. We have supply chain management, real supply chain management, where you're looking at flow, MOQ, everything. But my argument is that's 15 years old. Demand chain management, where we replenish instantly. You take it off the shelf and it's triggering replenishment. That's already old. And yet we're struggling how to optimize supply chain management when the real economy is moving into what I call dynamic value networks. It's not a chain anymore. It's a flow. Cargo flows. Finance flows. Information flows. There's no more chain involved in this. It's not supply or demand. And if you understand the concept of dynamic value networks, something actually John Gatorna and I came up with together years ago at his retreat. We said, why is it supply chain? What should it be? It should be dynamic value networks. And if you build this model, you can use fixed and virtual infrastructure. You can own assets, you can virtualize assets. You can turn them on, you can turn them off. You can use the water as a floating warehouse to change your whole working capital structure. And with the IT we have today, all of that's possible. I've been experimenting with it for the last 20 years with a great team, a few in the room today. So I just want you to think not about supply chain management. I want to be the radical in the room and tell you if you're doing supply chain, you should be driving an old car. It's the future, dynamic value networks. And that is possible because IT is integrating. If your entire business is structured around one ERP system, I'm not going to leave out the names, of course, but if it's one ERP system that does everything and your SOPs are built on it, And can you shut this door? It's going too much. Anyways, your SOP is structured. Everything is on ERP. But in the new economy, that will hold you hostage because new technology is coming up, which is so fast, so dynamic, and you need to be able to attach and leverage new technologies around your business to unlock this potential. And if you're stuck in a completely rigid old model, as powerful as it is, you will not be nimble, you will be vulnerable. So you have to even rethink in the future how you leverage ERP. And my argument is that the data warehouse, how you have the data, is key. And then you can attach different technology solutions around it to pull the data from different objectives. But you have to be more nimble in how you look at data and systems in the future, because some of the best technologies are going to come out of startups, out of disruptors. And whoever grabs that and leverages it, Kunal, you're already doing that. You're creating some of your own IT within Batil Group, right? To your advantage. So when IT integrates the finance, the physical product, the transport movement, the consumer information, the big data on trends, the demographics within radiuses of stores, when you have all that information through different systems accessible through a data warehouse, you become very powerful and you can move from supply chain management to dynamic value networks. Very important. And when you do that, it isn't shipping anymore. We need new vocabulary. It's integrated flow. The product is flowing. And if you see it, it's integrated. And if I know when a single piece or a carton is 3 days away or 5 days away or 9 days away on the water, that's my warehouse. So I came up with this concept maybe 18 years ago for McDonald's, and we moved most of McDonald's inventory on a floating warehouse. We only left 7 days inventory, 7 to 10 days inventory in every country. And we use the water to hold 85% of the inventory 3 days away, 5 days away, 9 days away. It's an artery like the body. Why are we not leveraging it? And with that, we could even divert cargo in transit through ports and change. So the flow became a dynamic model. And it changes your working capital. So information flow allows us to turn shipping into integrated product flow. Inventory isn't just in warehouses, it's wherever you have visibility of it. And if you can manage that movement, then you have virtual warehousing as well. And financial flow. The value of a product flows in direct correlation with the physical product. So however you play with the movement of product, you change your working capital and even exposure to write-offs. And again, the key is how you have visibility. Your supply chain control should be like the pilot of a new Boeing. Yeah, I didn't say Airbus, I said Boeing, I'm still biased. But it should be a dashboard. Everything in your supply chain should be visible, accessible, live, not only on your computer, but on your hand phone. You should be able to know where any product is at any time. And with that visibility, you have a very different model. Manufacturing is changing dramatically. So we first had water and steel, traditional manufacturing in the mid-1800s, right? Then we moved to manufacturing driven by electricity, creating assembly line, mass production. Now we're moving into manufacturing driven by IT, resulting in digital manufacturing. And we're already moving into manufacturing driven by the Internet of Things. And when I learned Internet of Things, I was already told I was behind because it's now the Internet of Everything. Right? This is how fast it's coming, and that'll be my last slide. So the whole way we're manufacturing, companies are moving into stage 3, but others are already moving into stage 4, depending on your product, depending on your sourcing. But everything is changing at a speed unprecedented. So dynamic value networks is the evolution of new models of supply chain management in Asia. McDonald's We didn't have live tracking in those days. We basically estimated where the ships are, and we still freed up $60 to $80 million of inventory holding for McDonald's. Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King didn't figure it out, so that was the advantage. Today, I've done hubbing where we use a hub in Singapore. We use the water from the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Ocean, and the water is our inventory floating. We use a hub. The hub becomes a manufacturing center, repackaging, relabeling, and then we feed 14 countries just in time for Sara Lee, for Gillette, for Diageo Wines and Spirits, for Toys R Us, for anything. It's how it is. So the floating warehouse concept creates free storage, reduced duty payable, minimal stock holding in each country, and 24-hour inventory in each restaurant in the case of McDonald's. Every McDonald's restaurant is resupplied between midnight and 6 a.m. every day. In some cases, the bakery is on the rooftop of the warehouse. Now, the largest manufacturer in the world, as John referred to, is Li & Fung. Li & Fung had up to 20,000 factories in 54 countries. It's reduced a little bit. But at one point, 20,000 factories, now 15,000 factories. They produce everything you can think of for the major brands behind the scenes. From Ralph Lauren, to some Nike shoes, to Bed Bath & Beyond, to wine refrigerators, but always the customer's brand. They don't own any of the factories. They buy over unused capacity of factories around the world. They say, oh, you have 30% unused capacity, I now take it. And we'll manage it. And we're going to aggregate the raw material of not only you, but your competitors. So we're going to super buy garments, cloth, material, buttons, and then we're going to deploy it to you and your competitors neutrally, so you all benefit from that. And we're going to use virtual factories across the world, which will produce, if there's a strike, if there's a political issue, we can shift your manufacturing to another country within 8 weeks, sometimes 1 month. So the entire production is now virtual. It can shift, it can adapt. How does that compete against someone who's stuck? So years ago, the CEO of Sara Lee came out with his board, and they met with us, and he said proudly, we have factories in all these countries, and he named the cities, Chicago and Mexico City, and the board members were sitting up in their chairs very proudly. And he said, and they're in all the wrong places now. And I'm stuck with them for 20 more years. And we ended up producing a bunch of their products in virtual factories. So you don't have to own a factory to be a great producer. What you have to do is design a great product. And Li & Fung even has designing teams that can do that for you as a customer too, in so many different spaces. So even Abercrombie and Fitch. So virtual manufacturing created by Li & Fung. Who replicated that model in the electronics industry? Foxconn, the largest electronic virtual manufacturer. They do Dell, they do the old IBM computers, they do Apple. The same thing that Li & Fung does, completely neutral, everything secret in silos, but I get to aggregate you and your competitors for all the raw material. You shouldn't be competing on raw material, you should be competing on the quality of your product. And virtual inventory. I love the word virtual, you're learning that today. Because in dynamic value networks, you have a lot more flexibility. And your inventory is not trapped, right? So you can turn on production in a virtual factory, and then 3 months later you can shut it off away from Christmas season or Chinese New Year or Diwali. You can have your core activities, but you can trigger certain products from virtual, depending on the product complexity. Certainly not an auto engine, right? I understand that. But you can play with inventory in a very unique way. Now, years ago we looked, this was This was the CEO of a Fortune 30 company, and he came to our opening of, at that time, the largest hub in Asia. And this was the chaos because in each country they were using different freight forwarders, different warehouses, different systems. Politically, each country had certain biases. So this is what the supply chain looked like of a Fortune 30 company. And the CEO was in the room when we had this, and he whispered to the guy next to him, and he said, whoever has a supply chain like that, they should fire the CEO. And I wanted to hold a mirror up, but I didn't. So this is how we converted it. We created a neutral 4PL entity, everything transparent. We would grab the data from all the different entities, shippers, warehousing, everything, and we would give them live visibility dashboards. Open book costing, everything open book, and we charged a management fee as a percentage of the value of the product, but we would always show that the savings were much greater. So this was how the first model of 4PL came out. We would use our own huge hub to change value, but we would actually take competitors' warehouses, excess capacity, and you say, you have 30% excess capacity in your warehouse. I'm in charge of this customer for the next 3 years as their 4PL, but I'm still happy to work with you as long as you give me warehouse space and visibility. So we actually not only used our hub, we used our competitors' warehouse networks around Asia. And then we integrated it with IT, so we had visibility. Our hub was the best in Asia at the time. So we used that. The Singapore government even put customs on site in our facility and integrated the IT with us. So we could clear cargo in 15.3 seconds. The ASRS, every single slot we could convert from bonded to non-bonded within 12 minutes. That was 12 years ago. So we basically used our competitors' warehousing. And in India, when we did a first 4PL with Arshi in the old days, with the hubs being built in the railroad, waiting for the VAT to happen, we had facilities, but we used our competitors' warehouses, and we used other logistics companies' warehouses, but we integrated the IT. So it's already been done in India too, for Madura Garments, for Globus, and others. So the 4PL integrator is an interesting thing. This was a company I was involved with Mr. Ajay Mittal starting. We just had to wait through a 4-year VAT decision. Thankful to Prime Minister Modi for dealing with it. But with Mr. Mittal, we created the first free trade warehousing zone logistics cities in India, 384 acres each. The area outside the port of Bombay, the entire valley, which you'll see now is amazing infrastructure, and Kurja on the rail hub outside Delhi. And our plan was to build 5 of these, and all linked by railroad. We also bought the National Railway license, so we operate 19 trains now, but Ajay will take it up to 58 eventually. So we built our own train network in India too. The idea is foreign territory islands strategically placed in India, connected by rail, bypassing the national highway system, to repackage, relabel, store duty-free with customs on site, and then to use the rail network, and then to link it with other warehouses that we don't want to own, taking excess capacity, virtual warehousing. But you don't want to hold a lot of product in these little warehouses. You want to use hubbing and sub-hubbing. And we were waiting for the VAT to happen, because when the VAT happened, it took bold leadership to drive that through. Now you can really leverage the opportunities in India's supply chain. You can now do hubbing and sub-hubbing and change your whole production and distribution patterns in a way you couldn't when you had to deal with paperwork between each state. So I think a really exciting time for India to leverage. So this is something we created years back. We took it public on the stock exchange. An integrated value chain. So we have supply chain tech, 3PL company, 4PL infrastructure, rail, and a knowledge center. So it was quite a radical thing. We launched it, took off. Then the VAT didn't happen. Mr. Mittal, I was president of the company. I left, and then he had to reposition the debt, and he has. And now he's adding knowledge data. So he's also building data parks, which will store data for companies, because data is a product with a supply chain. So this is something we played with a few years back. And that's what's already built right now. Each building is a few football fields in size. And it's also environmentally friendly, recycling water and solar windows on the rooftop and our own train system. So for me, it was a real privilege to be, in a small way, part of building something for India. And again, the virtual models, every single industry, the entity with the most power is the orchestrator. The execution at the lower end are plug and play. They can be changed and replaced. But whoever is the network orchestrator controls the power in the new economy. So, Apple, it's not just the iPhone, which I like, and the MacBook, but iTunes. iTunes is a network. It's a supply chain. He even talked to Victor Fung. They were friends. It's a supply chain. And I don't produce anything on it, Steve Jobs and now the new Tim Cook. It is simply a network. And if you want access to my network, I'll take 30% of anything sold on that network. Movies used to be distributed on CD, music, now it appears in your pocket instantly. You produce the movie, you produce the music, but Apple takes 30%. Now, they have a thing, knowledge network orchestration. This is another thing. I see the real power is the orchestrator of the network and the knowledge moving across it. And this is the new economy model. And with that, you can convert fixed to virtual assets. Amazon isn't just a big retail player, it's the largest owner of the cloud network on the planet by far. Microsoft, Google are 1/4 the size of Amazon's cloud network, and they're the second and third largest in the world. So controlling data in the cloud is like controlling cargo in a warehouse. It's the same now. So you can see now supply chain, quote, is moving into finance, it's moving into data. This is what we do with product. Now they're doing the same, except it's a data warehouse instead of a product warehouse. So Amazon is storing in the cloud, but it's virtual tech infrastructure because they also buy excess capacity from other companies' computer systems and park data on it as well. So they have their own centers and they also have virtual centers that they use because they're the network orchestrator. Apple has over 1,800,000 app designers in the world that they pay no salary to, no rental, because you're creating the app for them. And if it's good enough, I will allow you access on my iTunes network, and then I will take 30% of it permanently. So this is a supply chain, except the model is evolving. And so producing the movies, I'm working now with actually a digital movie company, a new model, quite cool. Please watch Hotel Mumbai when it comes out next year, about the incident that happened. It's a beautiful movie, all-star cast, but he's creating a digital movie studio. So you think of Apple, you think of Amazon. OpenPort's something I was helping out earlier. They were building an Uber model for trucking, and then they were developing blockchain. So again, not owning the trucks, but managing the trucks neutrally. When did the truck stop for 15 minutes to get food? Where is it? Different trucking companies, but you can pull it all up on one dashboard and see 15 trucks in northern Mumbai, 8 different companies. It's all irrelevant. You control the visibility, you control the knowledge, you control the network. So I don't want to be the trucking company, I just want to control the trucking company, right? And that's where the money is. And in this model, the cost is all open book, and they take a fee on it, 2 to 3%. What do freight forwarders get when they're helping you as a Fortune 500 company? Usually a hidden spread of about 20 to 22% on the trucking. And because they never had competition to provide really complex visibility, they basically put the data in spreadsheets and pull out nice things. Exceptions to the rule, of course. And I'm sure our friends at Agility will be an exception to the rule because it's a great company. So I did mention them today too. But think about this. It is really interesting. And then blockchain element. We're hearing, I'll be honest, a year and a half I didn't understand blockchain and cryptocurrency, right? But now I'm involved with two cryptocurrencies, including an exchange, and two blockchain ventures. And the best way to learn is to get involved in these. Well, the blockchain is going to create, through shared ledger, cryptography, consensus, smart contracts, other tools, there are different models coming. Closed blockchain, open blockchain. IBM's doing a closed blockchain. 12 different projects currently. Then there's the open with miners who validate. But basically your data blends in, and as blockchain goes into the supply chain, it's going to create a whole new level of data control and secrecy of your product. And if everything is secret and protected through an encrypted network, it's easier to bring more information into a single system. Because today we still see everything separate. Oh, this is my data. This is my data. You're my customer, but for this. But the power is how you integrate it. And if the information is secured neutrally on a blockchain, you can pull all the information from all the different entities into it, and that unleashes a very different level of supply chain control. Now, there are 1,172 cryptocurrencies in the world. I'm involved with one currently. I think most of them will die. They should die, but a few will survive. And the ones that survive will be enabling tools for the blockchain. So cryptocurrency is hyped, but it is real. And it will be ripped apart, restructured, but the survivors of that will play a tool supporting a much more powerful blockchain solution. And why did I put this slide up? Because it's going to affect every one of you within the next 2 to 3 years. If you're not thinking about leveraging blockchain, at least, into your structure, you're going to be caught off guard and lose your competitive advantage. By the way, the old model, Bitcoin miners were using the same energy level as the country of Denmark. Ethereum miners were using the same energy as Cyprus. So that's not sustainable. So they've nuanced it, they've changed it, and they have a different methodology. But don't forget that cryptocurrencies will play a role, but more importantly is how you're going to use blockchain. How many of you, showing hands, how many of you have blockchain solutions currently? Yep, Agility, I see the hand. 1, 2, 3, 5 of you. 6. Good. You're the vanguard. And again, it's an interesting thing. But look at, interesting, cryptocurrency market cap is 218 billion US dollars. That's not small. So even the ones that die out, this is already real, but it's going to change and evolve. So keep an eye out. Now you look at virtual retail. Virtual retail is taking over physical sales, right? And you're buying product online, and then the supply chain executes seamlessly. The largest taxi cab company in the world is Uber. They don't own any cars. The largest hotel group in the world is Airbnb. Airbnb, 1 million rooms, 191 countries. Uber, 1 million drivers, 486 cities. They don't own any assets, just like Li and Fung. But they control the network. Do you want to own the car in Uber, or do you want to control the network in Uber? Where's the money? This is how business is evolving. That, by the way, is Elon Musk's new electric truck coming up. He's my number one hero in the world. I haven't met him yet. I've met quite a few interesting people, but he's a genius. 5 different ventures, including having docked with the space station 3 times already with SpaceX. Amazon's drone delivery. Okay, this is already in play, and they're just waiting for FAA licensing. And it's rolling out in 7, 8 countries. So dropping at your doorstep by drone. Amazon patented in February of 2016 a patent to do 3D manufactured trucks. And the 3D manufactured trucks load with chemicals, and they're driving to your house, which according to Google is 30 minutes away with traffic. And you've ordered 3 products which take 8 minutes and 24 seconds each to print. And it automatically is printing the product. And as you arrive, the products are done, and they just put it in a box and deliver it to your door, which means they're not using warehousing. So someone yesterday mentioned 3D printing. Yeah, it's big. So we already print spare parts on the space station. We're printing food for the Mars colony starting in 2030. But we're going to be printing a lot of products. And Singapore, we're already looking at 3D printing centers to feed 2 or 3 countries max. Some cities, you'll order a product and it'll be printed in your city and delivered 4 hours later. And some printers will be in your home, and when you buy a product, it will print in your house. It's coming much faster than you think. 3D printing, AI robotics, very, very fast. I was in Germany, went to a bar. The bar was a robot. Poured my beer with a perfect 2 inches of foam. Can mix over 1,000 different cocktails. This is coming very fast. And that's a real robot face, by the way. Now this is, I'm winding up, so don't worry, I'm just slightly over. Holographic home delivery. This is real, by the way. On the left, you can see the product 3D. On the right, you have life-size holography, so I can have a conference call with you, and I'm standing in front of you. It feels like you're there. Now, the cost is coming down. In the previous French presidential elections, the candidate gave 2 speeches simultaneously, and the audience didn't know which stage he was on and which was virtual, because they did a holography of him. You're going to go online, and you're going to buy a product, and you're going to see a holographic image of yourself, and it knows your size. And you're going to try on clothes, and then you're going to press the order with perfect fit. That device, small scale, is $20,000 a piece right now. When it comes down to $1,000, it'll be in your home, just a few years away, and you'll start not only doing phone calls like in the Star Wars movie, but you'll be buying clothes and trying it on in your house on a miniature you. The technology is already there. It's just bringing the cost down. How will that affect your supply chain? Robotics, it really is coming fast. But this is what I want you to reflect on as I wind up. This is the speed of our transformation, which affects our supply chain, manufacturing, purchasing, consumers, everything. We went from the internet to social media to e-commerce to digital media to what I call knowledge networks enablement. The cloud, where all our data went off. Remember when you used to buy a server and then you'd pay to put the data on the server? Now it's the cloud, right? From the cloud, we can now launch knowledge network orchestration, changing the business model. And fixed and virtual infrastructure. We can now start playing with real assets and virtual assets, even using our competitors' warehouse space. And producing in other factories. By the way, in Lianfeng, we were producing products for direct competitors in the factory, and they were sharing the benefits of the raw material scale. Why not? Big data becomes the Internet of Things. Big data enables the Internet of Things, where technology talks to each other. In your car, parts of your car now are speaking to each other and making corrections, just like the airplane lands and takes off, really without a pilot. But Internet of Everything adds the human element, interacting with the Internet of Everything. And then we move to AI, robotics, and ultimately the singularity. Now, as I said yesterday, what does Apple do? They don't take forecasts from their stores. They pull big data within a 3-kilometer radius of the store. They look at who lives there, their age, their data, what websites they look at. They're pulling all this information about you. Then they're looking at past patterns, future forecasts, algorithmic predictive forecasting. And then they say you need 242 64 gig iPads. Whatever you say you need, we ignore. Then the data goes back, in this case, to a Singapore regional center. They cleanse that forecasting, and then the human being uses his intuition to adjust that. And that's the first phase of their AI. The second phase of their AI will start to take over more of that piece. So Apple's already using this in a major way. The singularity is when, around 2035 to 2040, according to Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Dr. Stephen Hawkins, who passed away, they estimate that around that time, one AI device in the US or China will be able to access all knowledge on the cloud worldwide and will be able to start taking control of the tools, AI and robotics, across the entire spectrum. So we're actually, Musk and others in Silicon Valley, they're starting to create an institute to build defensive programming and technology to control that. So I'm throwing this in at the end because if you're thinking, well, blockchain's 20 years away and, you know, digital supply chain is off in the future, you're very, very wrong. This is coming faster than you think. And my last slide is a reflection. Last year, I was really privileged to be on one of the 5 working committees for the G20. The G20 is the 20 heads of state meeting, including Prime Minister Modi. Germany was hosting that year. Our task force was future of employment, education, and supply chain. And then we wrote recommendations and then gave it to Chancellor Merkel, and then she built consensus into the mini document with the other leaders. Why am I bringing this up? Because it was scary to see the change. We looked from 20 different governments, top consulting firms, over 1 year with our meetings, and the conclusion was we're entering an era of disruption and economic transformation, unprecedented in human history. The age of digitization, AI, and robotics is the largest economic shift in the history of the world. Agrarian to manufacturing economy took 120 years. This is happening in 10. 10. Profound impact. We have to prepare for this. So we estimate that 6 million transport jobs will be replaced in the US between 2025 and 2028. We estimate 92% of what an attorney does can be done by AI within 3 years, and 8% will be the skill of the attorney in the courtroom and strategy and tactics. I saw Dr. WeDoctor in China. It's a 2.5-year-old startup with 126 million users in China, already using robotics and AIs connecting to patients and driving medical vans. This stuff is coming very fast. We're 2 years into the first 5 years. The following 5 years will move 100 times faster, and the 10 years after that is where the heavy transformation occurs. So you need to know that from the G20, those were the conclusions going to the heads of government. That politically, you have to, education, as John was saying, and Rakesh, we have to redesign education systems. We have to redesign our business models, and we have to figure out how to not only adapt to this, but how to use it to your advantage, right? If you embrace the changes, you're going to be cutting edge in our industry. And if you are skeptical and you don't prepare for it, you're going to be destroyed. I'm an optimist, so I think we're going to use this to our advantage. But in this industry, today we have some of the top leaders in India. You already are the creative visionaries in your fields. That's why you're here today. But you haven't even started the journey. So I've been playing, with 4PL and blockchain and different things experimenting, but I can say after the G20 experience, this stuff is coming very fast. We all need to relearn and then use this time to be the driver of change in our industry. But stop talking about 3PL and supply chain management and start talking about the new models. And use those models to energize your team, transform your business, and together take India forward to rise into the future as a great economic superpower, which is something I strongly believe in as well. So thank you for your time.